You're fired. The words were so easy to say. So easy to let roll off my tongue, even as my heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't believe I was actually doing it. But here I was, standing in front of a mirror in my office, phone pressed to my ear, the sound of my father's voice on the other end of the line. His voice was barely audible, caught between disbelief and anger. "Rachel," he started, his tone shaking with a mix of confusion and frustration. "What the hell are you talking about? You can't do this. You're my daughter. I built this company. I built it for us." I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. I had expected this. I had expected him to yell, to beg, to pull at every emotional string he could. But none of it was working. I had made my decision, and this time, I wasn't asking for his approval. "Yeah, Dad, I can. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you, you're fired," I said again, each syllable final, each word landing like a stone in the air between us. I took a deep breath. I bought the company. There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I wondered if he was about to hang up. But he didn't. Instead, I could hear him fumbling for words, as if he couldn't comprehend what I had just said. "You... what?" "I bought the company, Dad. It's mine now," I said, my voice calm but firm. "All those years of working for your approval, and now I'm the one calling the shots. You're out." The line went quiet again, and then I heard him laugh. It wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was the kind of laugh you give when you're trying to hide the tremor in your voice, trying to pretend like you're not completely blindsided. "You think you can just walk in here and take everything I've worked for?" He shot back, his voice rising in pitch. "You think I don't deserve this anymore? After everything I've done for you?" "Everything you've done for me?" I interrupted, a bitter laugh escaping me. "Do you even hear yourself, Dad? Do you understand what you've done? I've spent my whole life trying to earn your approval. All my hard work, all the sacrifices, and for what? For you to give everything to Mia? For you to tell me I wasn't worth your time?" He went silent. And in that silence, I finally felt the weight of all those years. I had worked harder than anyone. I had earned every step I took, but none of that mattered. None of it meant a damn thing to him. I didn't need to wait for him to respond. I had nothing left to say. I was done being the daughter who sought validation. I wasn't looking for his love anymore. I was taking what was mine. "You betrayed me, Dad. All of you did," I said softly, my voice unwavering. "And now? Now I'm taking everything back." I could hear him moving around, as if pacing, trying to keep his cool. "I didn't betray you, Rachel," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. "I did what was best for the family. I gave Mia the college fund. She needed it more than you. I thought you were stronger. I didn't want you to depend on me." "Strong?" I hissed, my anger flaring. "You never thought I needed anything, did you? You never saw me. I was the one who worked for everything. The one who never asked for a handout. You just handed it all to Mia. The one who never gave a damn about any of it. You broke me, Dad. And this is what happens when you push someone too far." His voice cracked, a desperate shaking tone slipping into it. "Rachel, please, don't do this. Please don't throw away everything I've built." I didn't even hesitate. "You threw it away, not me. I'm just picking up the pieces." And then I ended the call. I let the phone slip from my hand as I stared at the screen for a long moment. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. I had just fired my father. I had just taken everything away from him. But as I stood there, the rush of adrenaline slowly wore off, replaced by something else. Something I couldn't quite put into words. I wasn't sure if it was relief, or if it was the weight of what I had just done settling in. Either way, I didn't regret it. Not yet. My mind drifted back to the beginning, to all the years of silence, to everything I had sacrificed, and to the betrayal that had cracked everything open. And as I sat there, staring out the window of my office, the memories began to flood in, each one pulling me back to the past, to the reason why this had to happen. I wasn't just firing my father. I was firing the man who had never seen me for who I was. The man who had always taken me for granted. And Mia? She wasn't innocent in all of this. Not by a long shot. Stick around. This story only gets darker. I always knew who I was meant to be. At least, I thought I did. A driven, hard-working young woman with big plans for the future. From the time I could walk, I was determined to carve out a life on my terms. To be more than just someone's daughter or someone's sister. I was going to be Rachel, the one who made it on her own, who didn't rely on anyone but herself. Growing up, I was the responsible one, the one who worked tirelessly on my homework, the one who got the straight A's, the one who stayed up late studying, sacrificing sleep and a social life for the sake of building my future. In high school, I juggled 2 part-time jobs, always hustling, always thinking ahead, while Mia, my twin sister, seemed to have it all effortlessly. Mia was carefree, a social butterfly who could charm her way through any situation. People loved her instantly, and she never seemed to care about the same things I did. She didn't need to. Things always fell into her lap, and she knew how to work the room, how to get what she wanted without much effort. And while I admired her for it, her ease, her charm, I also hated it. Because no matter how much I worked, no matter how much I pushed myself, it always felt like she was the one who got everything. The thing about being a twin is that there's always this unspoken comparison, this invisible competition, even if you don't want it to be there. Mia always seemed to get the attention. It wasn't just the charm or the effortless social skills. It was everything. Even my dad seemed to favor her. I told myself it was just sibling rivalry, that it didn't matter. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was always second. That I was a good daughter. The one who never rocked the boat. The one who followed the rules. And in some twisted way, that made me invisible. Mia was the type of person who could show up late to a family event and still be the center of attention. My dad would always look at her with pride, his eyes lighting up when she walked into a room. I would stand off to the side, quietly watching, always the one in the background. Sure, I worked hard, but when you're the responsible one, no one really notices. They only notice when you slip up, when you make a mistake. But I didn't slip up. I couldn't afford to. My dad was never a man of many words, especially not to me. He was always focused on his business, always working, always providing for us financially. He wasn't there for the little things, the school plays, the parent-teacher conferences, the moments when I needed him most. That was my mum's role. She was the one who was always there, who attended every event, who made sure I felt loved and supported. My dad? He was absent, but I couldn't fault him too much. He worked hard for us, for our future, and I admired him for that, even if I couldn't understand why he couldn't show up emotionally. But what I wanted more than anything was his recognition. I wanted him to see me. not just as the daughter who followed the rules, but as someone who was worth noticing. I wanted him to be proud of my accomplishments, to see the sacrifices I made. I wanted him to look at me the way he looked at Mia, but I never did. Mia got the smiles, the affection. Mia was his favorite, even if it wasn't said aloud. And I was the one who worked, the one who stayed in the background. There were times when I would sit in my room late at night, my textbooks scattered around me, my mind racing with thoughts of what it would take to get his attention. Was I too boring, too predictable? Did he think I didn't need him because I was so focused on my goals? I wanted to break out of that mold, to be seen for who I was. But it always felt like I was just the good daughter, the one who did what was expected. It wasn't enough. It never was. There were small moments, small, fleeting moments, that made me think maybe, just maybe I was wrong. Maybe Dad did see me. When I came home with a perfect report card, or when I pulled off a big project at work, I could feel him looking at me, just a little bit differently. But it never lasted. The moment would pass, and Mia would walk in, and suddenly, it was as if I didn't exist again. I'll admit it. It hurt. A lot. It wasn't just jealousy. It was a deep, aching loneliness. I had given everything to this family, to being the good daughter, and in return, all I got was silence. And that's when I began to realize that maybe Mia wasn't the one I was competing with. Maybe I was competing with something I couldn't control. The way my father saw me. The way I was always in the background, never enough, never quite deserving of his attention. I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was when Mia got the college fund that should have been mine. Or maybe it was when my father told me he gave her the help because she needed it more. Maybe it was when I realized that no matter what I did, I would always be second in his eyes. But that was the moment I started to change. I started to ask myself, why the hell am I working so hard for people who don't even see me? I spent years trying to prove to my father that I was worth noticing, that I deserved the same love and support that Mia seemed to get so effortlessly. But when it came down to it, my dad never gave me the recognition I craved. He didn't see my sacrifices. He didn't see me at all. And now, as I stand here, the weight of everything we've been through hitting me all at once, I can't help but wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't pushed myself so hard? What would have happened if I had just let go of the need to prove something to him? Would things have been different? Would I still be in the shadows, waiting for someone to notice? Would you forgive them after this? Drop a comment if you've ever felt this kind of betrayal. The day my father announced who would receive the college fund should have been a moment of pride. It was a moment I had earned. I had spent years planning, working, and making sacrifices that no one ever seemed to notice. I had always kept my head down, always did what I was told, always followed the rules. And this was the reward. The one thing I had hoped would solidify my place in this family, in my father's eyes. I remember sitting at the dinner table, the smell of roast chicken lingering in the air, the clinking of forks and knives against porcelain. Mia and I sat across from our parents, as usual. My mum was busy talking about her day, her voice warm and soothing, while Mia, as always, was cracking jokes, easily making everyone laugh. I admired her in some ways, but I hated how effortless it all seemed for her. And me, I was content with my quiet accomplishments. But I knew this moment, this announcement, was about to change everything. I had worked so hard to get here. I wasn't expecting a handout. I didn't even ask for the college fund. I had figured I would do it myself, pay my own way, like I always had. But my dad had promised. I had never once doubted that the fund would be mine. Just like the scholarships, the loans, the hours I worked in high school and college. This was my reward, my future, my moment. But when he spoke, everything inside me stopped. Rachel, I've decided to give the college fund to Mia. I felt the air leave my lungs. I thought I heard him wrong. I glanced at Mia, who didn't seem to understand the gravity of the moment. She smiled, unaware of what was happening to me. But I froze. The weight of his words sank in, like a stone dropping into my chest. Dad, what? The words barely came out of my mouth, my voice sounding foreign to me, trembling. Why? He set down his fork, wiping his mouth, the usual confident aura around him suddenly vanishing. Mia needs it more, Rachel. She's been struggling and, well, she's lost right now. She needs extra help, a fresh start. I sat there in disbelief. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears, my pulse pounding as the walls around me seemed to close in. She needs it more? I repeated, not understanding. What are you talking about? I've been working my ass off for years. I've earned it. You promised. His eyes shifted away from me, as if he couldn't meet my gaze. I'm doing what's best for the family, Rachel. Mia's always had trouble finding her way. This will help her and you. You're doing fine. You don't need it like she does. The sound of his words hit me like a slap in the face. You're doing fine. I had worked to be fine. I had worked harder than anyone. And this betrayal, cut deeper than anything I had ever felt. Mia, still oblivious to the storm brewing in my chest, beamed. Thanks, Dad. I didn't expect this. I'll make you proud, I swear. And in that moment, I felt like I was suffocating. My father had just handed everything to Mia. Everything I had fought for, worked for. He didn't see me. Not at all. I was nothing but a shadow, always in the background, while Mia, who had never had to try, got everything. The years of academic pressure, the sleepless nights working part-time jobs, the loans I had taken out to pay for tuition. All of it felt like a joke. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping across the floor. You've got to be kidding me. The room fell silent. My mum, who had been watching the entire conversation unfold with wide eyes, looked at me helplessly. But it didn't matter. All I could see was my dad, sitting there, unmoved. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. I turned and walked out of the room. I could feel Mia's eyes on me, but I didn't care. My stomach twisted in knots as I stormed into my bedroom and slammed the door behind me. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. I didn't want to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. My chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Why wasn't I enough? Mia hadn't worked for this. She hadn't earned it. I was the one who sacrificed everything to make this family proud. And now I was nothing. I wasn't sure how much time had passed before I went to find Mia. I didn't even know what I was going to say. But I had to say something. I was angry, so angry, but I also needed to hear it from her. I needed to hear that she understood the weight of what had just happened. I found her in the living room, flipping through a magazine, completely unfazed. When I walked in, she looked up with that same easy smile she always had. Hey, Rachel. Everything okay? She asked, as if we hadn't just been handed the most life-changing news of my entire life. You got the fund, Mia? I said, my voice shaking with the anger I could no longer suppress. Do you even know what this means? She blinked, a slight confusion crossing her face. Of course I know. Dad's giving it to me because, well, I need it more than you. I think you're doing fine without it. That was it, her answer. That was her understanding of the situation. The words felt like daggers. Mia was completely oblivious. You need it, I whispered, my chest aching with the weight of the betrayal. You never tried. You never had to try. I've worked my ass off, Mia. I worked so hard to get here. And you just coasted. And now you get the reward that should have been mine. You don't even understand, do you? You didn't earn it. She stared at me, her lips parted, but no words came out. She didn't get it. She didn't understand what I'd sacrificed. She didn't see the years of me running on empty, of trying to prove myself to a family who could never see me beyond my grades and my good behavior. Mia's lack of remorse, her complete inability to recognize the emotional cost of my sacrifice, made my blood boil. You're happy, Mia. You're happy that Dad handed you everything, and you don't even realize what this is doing to me. She didn't say anything else. She didn't apologize, didn't try to empathize. She just sat there, flipping through the pages of her magazine. She was happy, and that was all that mattered. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me like a boulder. I wasn't sure what was worse, the fact that my father had betrayed me, or the fact that Mia couldn't even see it. As I walked away, I asked myself for the first time, what do I owe these people? What did I owe a family that never saw me for who I was? What did I owe a father who gave everything to Mia, who thought I didn't need the college fund, who thought that my hard work and my sacrifices meant nothing? Drop a comment if you've ever felt this kind of betrayal. Would you forgive them after this? The days following the announcement felt like an endless blur of disbelief. My father's words echoed in my mind, each repetition like a slap to the face. Mia needs it more, he had said. She's struggling, he had said. But what about me? What about everything I had done for this family? What about the years of effort, of sacrificing my own happiness to prove that I was worthy of being seen, worthy of being noticed? I couldn't shake the feeling of abandonment. The weight of it crushed me from the inside. It felt like I had been standing on solid ground, believing that I had earned my place in this family, in this world. And then, without warning, the ground disappeared beneath me, leaving me to fall into an abyss of disappointment and betrayal. My father, the one person whose approval I had worked so tirelessly to earn, had turned his back on me. It wasn't just the college fund. It wasn't just the fact that Mia, of all people, had gotten what was supposed to be mine. It was the sheer disregard for everything I had done. It was the years of proving myself, of trying to gain my father's love, only for him to choose Mia over me. Again. And this time, it was too much. I couldn't keep pretending like I didn't care. I couldn't keep fooling myself into thinking that my sacrifices mattered. I should have been angry. I should have been furious. But instead I was numb. It was like a cold wave had washed over me, leaving me empty. Empty of hope, empty of purpose, empty of everything that used to make me feel like I was someone in this family. I tried to talk to my mom. I really did. But even she seemed to be caught in the crossfire, unable to understand the depth of my hurt. I watched as she tried to play the peacemaker, telling me that my dad meant well, and that maybe Mia just needed some extra help right now. But it wasn't about that. It was never about that. I wasn't mad because Mia needed the fund. I was furious because my father had chosen her. He had chosen the daughter who had never struggled, the one who could charm her way through anything. He had chosen the one who never had to work for anything, while I had given everything. I couldn't even bring myself to talk to Mia. She didn't get it. She didn't understand how much this hurt me, how much I had sacrificed for her to get everything I could only dream of. I expected some level of remorse, some understanding from her, but all I got was indifference. Mia was happy. She was always happy. She didn't even know the emotional cost of what she had been given. I felt like an invisible person in my own family. My father, my sister, they didn't see me. They never saw me. It wasn't just about the fund. It was about my whole life, about everything I had done to fit into a family that never truly appreciated me. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I sacrificed, it was always Mia who came first. And I was left standing in the shadows, wondering why I kept trying. Days turned into weeks, and the isolation only deepened. I stopped going out with friends. What was the point? I had nothing to share with them anymore. They didn't understand what I was going through, how I had just been erased by the very people who should have had my back. I buried myself in work and school. It was easier to lose myself in assignments, to focus on anything other than the pain that gnawed at me. At least when I was working, I didn't have to think about how alone I felt, how invisible I had become. I would go through the motions of daily life, nodding along to conversations, laughing at jokes, but it all felt like a performance. The truth was, I was angry, I was hurt, I was furious, and I couldn't share any of it. I couldn't talk to anyone, so I kept it all inside, letting the resentment grow until it became a constant hum in the back of my mind. Some nights I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the house settling around me. I couldn't sleep. Not anymore. The anger kept me awake, and the hurt twisted in my chest like a vice, squeezing tighter and tighter. My thoughts would turn dark. What was the point of all of this? What was the point of trying, of pushing myself to be the person everyone wanted me to be, if it didn't matter? My dad would never see me. Mia would never understand. I was nothing in their eyes, a side character in my own life story. I began to imagine a future where I wasn't under the thumb of my father or Mia. A future where I was my own person, where I could finally be free from the weight of their expectations. But that freedom, that independence, would require a radical change. It would require me to walk away from everything I had known, to sever the ties that bound me to this family that had never truly seen me. I wasn't sure if I was ready to do that. I wasn't sure if I could. But I couldn't keep living in this suffocating space where my worth was defined by someone else's choices. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same picture. The picture of me, finally breaking free, finally standing on my own. It was the only thing that kept me from completely losing myself. And yet, the thought terrified me. Could I really leave? Could I really walk away from everything I had known? Could I give up on my family? The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally? As much as I tried to deny it, I couldn't ignore the question anymore. What did I owe these people? What was I willing to sacrifice for the sake of my own happiness? Drop a comment if you've ever felt this kind of betrayal. Would you forgive them after this? It wasn't until I found myself sitting across from someone who actually saw me that everything started to change. Her name was Valerie, and she was one of my professors at business school. I'd been attending classes for a while now, trying to bury myself in textbooks, learning everything I could about business, finance, and entrepreneurship. I was still angry, still hurting, but I was starting to believe in the idea that maybe, just maybe, I could build something on my own, something that had nothing to do with my father or Mia. I met Valerie by chance during office hours. I had stayed late to ask her about a particular case study on leadership and corporate culture. Afterward, she and I started talking about my work, and before I knew it, I was telling her about my family, the years of trying to prove myself to my father, and the crushing betrayal I felt after he handed the college fund to Mia. Valerie's eyes softened as I spoke, but it wasn't sympathy I saw in her gaze. It was something different. Respect. Understanding. That's a lot of weight for one person to carry, she said, her voice quiet but firm. And it's clear to me that you've been working with the wrong people your whole life. Her words landed on me like a lightning strike. For the first time, I realized how much I had been carrying alone. How much of my energy had been devoted to earning the approval of people who would never give it. She continued, her voice never wavering. You've been playing by their rules, Rachel. You've been following the path they've set for you, and you've been letting them dictate your worth. But you're not just a bystander in your own life. You have the skills, you have the vision. You don't need to keep chasing after their recognition. You can create your own. My breath caught. The truth of her words started to settle into my bones, like an anchor in a sea that had always been stormy. What do you mean? I asked, my voice a little softer than I intended. Valerie leaned forward, a glimmer of excitement in her eyes. I mean, you have what it takes to build something on your own. Hell, you've already done the hard work. Investing in your education, your skills, your growth. Now, you just need to stop letting your father's business, your sister's success, or anyone else's decisions control you. I shook my head, still unsure. But I don't know the first thing about starting a business. And even if I did, how could I possibly? Why not take control of what you already know? Valerie interrupted gently. The company your father built, if you want it, it could be yours. Think about it. You've always been in the background, right? Always trying to fit into a role they gave you. But if you take his company, not only would you be reclaiming your power, but you'd be doing it on your own terms. The idea was ludicrous. It felt too big to even consider. But as she spoke, a seed was planted. A small burning desire began to grow inside me. An undeniable hunger for independence, for control, for something that was mine. Maybe I didn't need him after all. Maybe it wasn't about getting back at him. Maybe it was about me standing up and saying I was worthy of my own success. I stayed silent for a long time after that conversation, letting the idea simmer. I had been trying to prove myself to my father, to my family, for so long that I had forgotten what it was like to prove something to myself. But Valerie had opened my eyes to a different kind of power, one that didn't require anyone else's approval, one that was mine alone. I spent the next few weeks consumed by this new idea. I researched my father's company, the ins and outs of it, the finances, the structure, the people involved. What I found was both reassuring and terrifying. The company was successful, but it was also in need of new leadership. Someone who could take it to the next level. Someone who wasn't weighed down by the past. And then it hit me. I didn't need my father's approval to succeed. I didn't need Mia's recognition. I had worked hard enough to earn something of my own, something that wasn't built on their terms. If I could buy his company, I could reshape it. I could make decisions based on my vision, not his. I could turn the tables completely. The thought of taking control made my heart race. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about taking back my life. It was about owning my future. The idea consumed me. I started taking courses on business acquisition, learning everything I could about how to buy a company, how to raise capital, how to lead. It wasn't just about buying the company. It was about becoming the person I had always wanted to be. The person who didn't need to prove herself anymore. The person who called the shots. I spent hours at my desk, making connections with investors, attending networking events, and studying market trends. I even reached out to a few business advisors who could help me understand the logistics of buying my father's company. It was overwhelming, but it felt right. It felt like the first step I'd ever taken toward becoming the person I always knew I could be. Valerie was there for every step of the way. She checked in with me, pushed me when I doubted myself, and reassured me that I was more than capable of doing this. You don't need their approval, Rachel. You've got everything you need right in front of you. It felt like a dream, but every day I got closer to making it a reality. With each new connection, each piece of the puzzle that fell into place, the weight of the past started to lift. I wasn't stuck in the past anymore. I was moving forward, creating my future on my own terms. And the more I thought about it, the more the idea of taking my father's company seemed like the perfect revenge. But not just revenge. It was my way of reclaiming my dignity, my power, and my independence. It wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about showing the world that I didn't need anyone's validation. I was more than capable of standing on my own. After months of preparation, I felt ready. I had done the research, gathered the resources, and started putting everything into motion. It was time to buy my father's company. It was time to take control of my life. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Could you walk away from everything you've known to build something on your own? Drop a comment and let me know what you think. I remember the day I walked into that business school class for the first time. The weight of my decision hanging heavy in my chest. I wasn't just sitting there to learn about finance or marketing. I was there to change my life, to transform myself into someone who could stand on her own 2 feet. Someone who didn't need to rely on the approval of others to succeed. Business school was intense. It was grueling, exhausting, and filled with long nights and early mornings. But I knew I had no other choice. I had no other path to take. Every time I sat down in class or stayed up late, going over case studies, I reminded myself that this was the only way forward. This wasn't just about buying my father's company. It was about learning everything I could to prove to myself that I could stand on my own without anyone's help, especially not my father's. The first few months were brutal. I was surrounded by classmates who seemed to have a natural grasp of business. People who were confident, who had been groomed for success their entire lives. And here I was, just trying to make sense of balance sheets, profit margins, and market trends. But I didn't let myself back down. I couldn't. I had already made the decision that I was going to be someone who belonged in that world. Not just a passive participant, but an active player. It was during those late nights, piles of textbooks scattered on my desk, the faint hum of streetlights filtering through the windows, that something inside me began to shift. I wasn't just learning about business. I was learning about myself. For the first time in my life. I realized that my self-worth didn't need to be tied to my father's approval. I didn't need him to validate my existence. I didn't need anyone to tell me that I was good enough. I could do this on my own. One evening, as I sat hunched over my laptop, typing up a business plan for an assignment, I caught my reflection in the dark window. I wasn't the same person who had walked into that class months ago. I had grown, not just in knowledge, but in confidence. I wasn't desperate for validation anymore. I wasn't hoping for a pat on the back from my father, my family, or anyone. I had learned to validate myself. The more I learned, the more I realized how much I had been holding myself back. For years, I had been afraid of stepping out of my comfort zone, afraid of failing, afraid of being rejected. But now, the fear of failure felt like nothing compared to the possibility of doing nothing, of staying stuck, forever chasing after the approval of people who would never see me for who I really was. The shift was subtle at first, small moments of realization, when I nailed a presentation in front of my classmates, or when I figured out how to negotiate better terms with a potential investor for a class project. Each victory, no matter how small, built my confidence piece by piece. I stopped questioning myself. I stopped feeling like I had to prove something to everyone around me. I started taking on smaller business ventures outside of school. I was hesitant at first. Would anyone take me seriously? But I dove in head first. I started working with local startups, helping them refine their business models, advising them on marketing strategies, and connecting them with investors. At first, it was intimidating, especially when people seemed to doubt my experience. But I pushed through. I learned to assert myself, to speak up in meetings, and to make bold decisions, even when they scared me. I remember one afternoon, sitting in a cramped coffee shop, finalizing the details of a partnership agreement with a small tech company. My hands were shaking, but my mind was sharp, focused. I looked across the table at the company's CEO, a man twice my age, who had more years of experience than I could even begin to fathom. He wasn't an easy sell. He was skeptical. But I didn't let his doubt rattle me. I kept my voice steady, my responses sharp. I felt the power shift in that room. For the first time, I wasn't just the good daughter of a wealthy businessman. I was Rachel, a woman who had built something of her own. By the time I was securing investors for my own ventures, the idea of buying my father's company seemed like an inevitable next step. I had the knowledge, the experience, and, most importantly, the confidence to see it through. The more I researched the company, the more I realized that the pieces were falling into place. It wasn't just about business. It was about power, about control, about standing up and saying that I was worthy of my place in the world. And the more I thought about it, the more I understood that this wasn't a personal vendetta. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my future. It was about me taking control of my life and saying, "This is mine." The moment I made the decision to buy the company, I felt a sense of freedom I had never known before. The thought of walking into my father's business, of taking ownership of what he had built, sent a rush of excitement through me. This wasn't just business. It was my moment of validation, not from anyone else, but from myself. It wasn't easy, though. It took months of preparation, securing the financing, connecting with the right people, gaining their trust, and convincing them that I was serious. There were moments of doubt, moments when I thought I was in over my head, but I didn't back down. I had come too far to turn back now. I remember the night I received the final confirmation that the deal had gone through. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, looking at the woman who stared back at me, the woman who had made it happen, and I smiled, not because I had won, but because I had finally done something for myself. I wasn't just Rachel, the good daughter, anymore. I was Rachel, the one who had built her own empire. The first taste of victory was sweet. It wasn't about owning a company, it was about owning my future. And for the first time in my life, I was in control. Have you ever reached a moment when you realized your power was in your own hands, not someone else's? Drop a comment if you've ever taken control of your future on your terms. The email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, clear and crisp, just like the moment it marked. I sat at my desk, the glow of the screen lighting up my face, and read the words again and again, barely believing them. The acquisition has been approved. The transaction is complete. The company is now yours. A rush of excitement and disbelief flooded my chest, almost knocking the breath out of me. It wasn't just the fact that I had bought my father's company. It was the realization that I was no longer just Rachel, the good daughter, the one who lived in the shadow of her father's legacy. I was now Rachel, the business owner, the woman who had fought for everything she had, and had finally taken control of her life. I stood up from my desk, my legs feeling like they were made of rubber. I couldn't help the smile that spread across my face as I looked out the window of my small apartment. The skyline stretched out before me, as if the city itself were welcoming me into the fold. This was it. This was the moment I'd been working toward for so long. This was the turning point. I looked down at the email again, reading the words one more time, my hands shaking slightly. The validation I'd longed for, that I had been trying to earn for years, was finally here. But it didn't feel like I thought it would. It wasn't a simple win or a moment of revenge against my father. It was the beginning of something bigger, something that was mine. The reality of it settled in slowly, piece by piece. The enormity of the task ahead of me was undeniable. I wasn't just inheriting a company. I was inheriting a legacy, a set of expectations and a network of people who were loyal to someone else. But as daunting as it was, I knew I had made the right decision. I had spent years building this vision, and now it was time to turn that vision into reality. The first few days after the acquisition were a whirlwind of meetings, paperwork, and adjusting to the new role I had just assumed. I had to get used to walking into boardrooms where I was no longer a spectator, but the one leading the discussions. I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me. The executives who had worked under my father, the employees who were loyal to him, and the business partners who had known me only as the daughter of the man who had run the company. The transition wasn't smooth. I knew it wouldn't be. Rachel, I don't know if this is the right time to say this, but are you sure about this? One of the senior executives asked during one of the first meetings I chaired. His voice was calm, but I could hear the underlying skepticism in it. I nodded, my eyes meeting his. I'm sure, I said, my voice steady but firm. This company needs change, and I'm here to lead it. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I knew they didn't believe me. Not yet. But I didn't need their belief. Not anymore. For the first time, I wasn't trying to fit into a role someone else had set for me. I was creating my own. I had fought too hard to let anyone push me aside. And if they were going to doubt me, then so be it. I wasn't backing down. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the company's operations. I was everywhere, meeting with department heads, analyzing financial statements, and assessing potential opportunities for expansion. I spent long hours at the office, making difficult decisions and beginning to make my mark on the company. It wasn't easy. Some of the older employees were resistant to my leadership, unwilling to let go of the idea of my father as the figurehead of the company. They were used to a different kind of leadership, one that was more hands-off, more paternal. But I was different. I didn't come from that background of privilege. I wasn't the product of years of corporate politicking. I was here because I earned it. And I wasn't about to let anyone forget that. I made changes, small ones at first, but each one was a statement that I was here to take charge. I implemented new systems for communication, revamped the company's marketing strategies, and focused on fostering a culture of accountability. Every move I made, every decision I took, was designed to show the world that I wasn't just some naive woman trying to play businesswoman. I was the one running this ship now. But it wasn't just about business. It was about the subtle power shift that was happening beneath the surface. I could feel it every time I walked into a room. Every time I made a decision that was met with resistance or approval. I was no longer Rachel, the daughter who always tried to make everyone happy. I was Rachel, the one who decided what happened next. And then, the recognition started to come. At first it was small. A few articles in business magazines praising the changes I was making, highlighting the company's new direction. The industry was taking notice. People were beginning to see me, not as my father's shadow, but as a force to be reckoned with on my own. The more I worked, the more I realized something crucial. I wasn't just succeeding for the sake of my business. I was succeeding for myself. Every win, every victory felt like a step toward reclaiming my self-worth. A few months after taking over, I received an invitation to a prestigious business conference in New York, a place where some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world gathered to share ideas and discuss the future of the industry. I knew it was a big deal, and as I prepared to give my first public speech as the CEO of the company, I felt a rush of nerves. But when I stood on that stage, looking out at the sea of faces, some of whom had known my father, some of whom had known only me, I didn't feel afraid. I felt powerful. The words flowed effortlessly, and I could see the shift happening. They weren't just listening to a woman who had inherited a legacy. They were listening to someone who had built something of her own. The response to my speech was overwhelming. It was the first time I felt like I wasn't just someone's daughter. I was someone. And the world was starting to see that too. The more I gained recognition in the industry, the more I realized something else. That this wasn't just about my father. It was about all the people who had doubted me. All the people who had assumed that I would always be in the background. I wasn't just proving something to my father. I was proving something to myself. I was finally seeing myself as the person I'd always wanted to be. And the more recognition I received, the more I understood. This was just the beginning. I had not only bought my father's company, I had transformed it. And in the process, I had transformed myself. Have you ever felt like you had to prove yourself to the world? What's the hardest part about stepping into your own power? Drop a comment and share your story. The day had come. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. The weight of the moment. The final act in a story that had been building for years. I had spent my whole life fighting for approval, for recognition, for a place in a family that had never truly seen me. Now, I wasn't just fighting for that approval. I was taking control of everything I had worked for. I called the meeting. It was set for the afternoon, a time when most of the employees would be in meetings or at their desks. I needed privacy for what was coming, and I knew this would be the moment that would change everything. I could already feel the tension building, that knot of nerves in my chest. But there was no going back now. I sat in the conference room, the door closed behind me, and waited. The table was pristine, its glass surface reflecting my hands as they rested, palms down, on the cold surface. My breath was steady, even as my heart thudded louder with each passing minute. I had already made up my mind. There was no more hesitation. The door creaked open, and I looked up to see my father walking in, his face taut with confusion. Behind him, Mia entered, her usual carefree attitude replaced with a hint of unease. I could feel their eyes on me, both of them waiting for me to speak, to say something. But this time, it was me who held the power, and I was going to use it. I didn't stand up. I didn't need to. Instead, I simply gestured to the seats across from me. Sit down. We need to talk. Mia, always the one to fill the silence, spoke first. What's this about, Rachel? Why are we having a meeting like this? I've made a decision, I said, my voice firm. The words felt strange, yet liberating. It wasn't a choice I had made lightly, but it was the only one left. It's time for a change. I'm taking full control of this company now. My father's face tightened, his brow furrowing. What do you mean? Rachel, this is my company. I built it. And now it's mine, I replied. My words clipped. You've had your time. You had your chance to lead, and you made your choices. I've made mine. He shook his head, disbelief flashing in his eyes. You can't just take this from me. Rachel, I'm your father. This company is... It's mine now, I interrupted, the finality of my words making my chest tighten. And as of right now, you're fired. From the company. Effective immediately. The silence in the room was deafening. My father's face paled, and I could see the blood drain from his features. You're firing me? His voice cracked. After everything I've done for you? You think you can just take everything I've built? I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. Everything you built? Or everything we built? You've spent years ignoring me, taking me for granted. I've spent my entire life trying to please you, trying to prove that I was worthy of your approval. But you never saw me. You never saw my sacrifices. You handed everything to Mia without a second thought. And now, I'm done. I've worked too hard for this. His hands were shaking now, his face a mix of anger and hurt. You don't understand, Rachel. I did what was best for you, for this family. I've always done what was best for you. You didn't do what was best for me, Dad. You did what was easiest for you. You wanted to keep Mia happy, to keep her from falling apart. And you didn't care what that cost me. You took everything from me, but not anymore. It's my turn now. I looked at Mia, her face a mixture of confusion and disbelief. Mia, I said, my voice softer, but just as firm. I'm sorry, but you're fired too. Effective immediately. She blinked, her mouth opening and closing as if she couldn't quite process what was happening. You're firing me. What? Rachel, what is going on? This is crazy. I've had enough, I said, my voice cold. I can't keep pretending like I don't matter, like none of my hard work means anything. I can't keep letting you two walk all over me, expecting me to play the part of the obedient daughter, the obedient sister. I'm not that person anymore. There was a long pause. the words hanging in the air between us. My father looked like he wanted to scream, but he just sat there, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Mia, on the other hand, stood up abruptly, the confusion on her face replaced with frustration. "This is ridiculous, Rachel," she spat. "You think this will make things better? This isn't how you get what you want. You're ruining everything. I don't even understand why you're doing this." "I'm doing this because I've been invisible my entire life," I said, my voice suddenly quieter, raw with emotion. "I've worked myself to the bone, trying to get your approval, trying to prove that I was good enough, and it's never been enough. It's not about revenge, Mia. It's about me taking control of my own life, my own future. You never understood that, did you?" Her eyes narrowed, but there was no anger in them, only confusion and hurt. "I never asked for this, Rachel. I never wanted to hurt you." "I know," I said, my tone softening just a little. "But that's the problem. You didn't have to try. Everything just came to you, and I watched. I watched as you got everything I worked for, and I stayed in the background, and I'm done. I won't be invisible anymore." My father sat back in his chair, his face a mixture of defeat and anger. He looked like he wanted to say something, to fight back, but there was nothing left to say. The power had shifted, and he knew it. The room felt heavy, like everything was finally sinking in. I had just taken the biggest step of my life, and it felt like the ground beneath me was solid for the first time in years. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was trying to prove something. I had proven it. I had taken control. As I watched my father and Mia leave the room, I sat back in my chair, letting the weight of the moment settle over me. The air felt lighter, the silence somehow more peaceful. I had done it. I had taken everything I had worked for, everything that had been denied to me, and claimed it as my own. The power had shifted, the dynamic had changed, and for the first time, I felt like I was truly in control of my own destiny. Have you ever had to stand up and take control of your own life? How did it feel to finally take the reins? Drop a comment and share your thoughts. The first few weeks after taking over the company were a blur. My days were filled with meetings, emails, and late-night strategy sessions. I was no longer just Rachel, the good daughter who had lived in the shadow of her father's expectations. I was now the leader of a company, my company, and it was time to make my mark. I started by getting to know the employees, the people who had worked under my father for so long. It wasn't easy. Some were loyal to him, and they viewed me with skepticism, if not outright hostility. They didn't know me, didn't understand why I was here. But I didn't have time to worry about that. I was here to build something new, something that was mine. I couldn't afford to let their doubts derail me. I focused on the company's core strengths, the things that had made it successful under my father's leadership, and I started looking for ways to improve. I identified inefficiencies in our processes and began implementing new systems for communication and workflow. We needed to be faster, more agile, and more innovative if we were going to compete in an industry that was changing every day. I also made the hard decisions, firing employees who had become complacent, restructuring departments that weren't working, and reevaluating the company's long-term goals. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I wasn't afraid of making the tough calls. The company needed to evolve, and I was the one who was going to make that happen. But it wasn't just about the business, it was about me. I had spent so many years trying to earn my father's approval, trying to be the perfect daughter. But now, I was learning to validate myself. The more I took control, the more I realized I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't need my father's recognition, and I certainly didn't need Mia's attention. I had built something on my own, something that was mine, and that was enough. Slowly, things began to change. The company started to thrive under my leadership. I introduced new products, expanded into new markets, and strengthened our relationships with clients. The team I had inherited, though resistant at first, began to rally behind me. They saw my vision and understood that I wasn't just doing this for my own benefit. I was doing it to build something lasting, something that would outlast the shadow of my father's legacy. As the weeks turned into months, I began to see the fruits of my labor. Profits started to rise. Our brand began to gain recognition, and people started to take notice of the changes I was making. I began to hear whispers in the industry about the new leader who was shaking things up. They were talking about me, not as my father's daughter, but as Rachel, the CEO of a company that was redefining what it meant to succeed. I had finally become the person I had always wanted to be, the person I was always meant to be. But it wasn't just about the business success. As I watched the company grow, I realized something more profound. I had grown too. I had been forced to confront my deepest fears. The fear of failure, the fear of being overlooked, the fear of never being enough. And in doing so, I had built a new life for myself. A life where I was no longer defined by anyone else's expectations. I was finally, truly myself. There were moments when I caught myself reflecting on everything I had been through. The pain of feeling invisible, the anger at my father's betrayal, the frustration of being passed over for someone who had done nothing to earn it. I had spent years thinking that my worth was tied to their approval. But now I saw the truth. My worth had always been within me. I had just needed to realize it. The victory wasn't just about the company. It was about the woman I had become. I no longer needed validation from anyone. I had earned my place in the world, and I was finally at peace with myself. There were still moments of doubt, of course. There were still times when I second-guessed my decisions, when I wondered if I was doing the right thing. But they were fewer and farther between. Every time I walked into the office, every time I made a decision that propelled the company forward, I felt that much more confident in my abilities. The hardest part of this whole journey wasn't the work. It was the emotional toll. It was the constant battle of trying to prove myself to people who couldn't or wouldn't see my value. But now I didn't need to prove anything. I had already done that. I had taken control. I had built something for myself, and no one could take that away from me. As I stood in front of the window of my office, looking out at the city below, I couldn't help but smile. I had done it. I had taken the steps I needed to take, made the changes I needed to make, and created the life I wanted. The girl who had once sat in the shadows, trying to please everyone, was now the woman who stood at the helm of her own future. For the first time in my life, I felt complete, not because of what I had achieved, but because of who I had become. Have you ever reached a point where you realized you didn't need anyone's approval to succeed? How did it feel to take control of your own destiny? Drop a comment and share your story. As I sit here, looking back on everything that's happened, I can't help but reflect on how much I've learned. About business, yes, but more importantly, about myself. The woman I was when I first started this journey feels so far removed from the woman I've become. In many ways, it's as if I've shed an old skin, something that wasn't truly mine, to reveal who I've always been at my core. The path I've walked hasn't been easy. It's been filled with doubt, rejection, and betrayal. But through all of that, I've discovered the most important lesson of all. My worth was never dependent on anyone's approval. For so long, I sought validation from my father, from my family, from the people around me. I worked myself to the bone, trying to prove that I was enough, that I deserved a place in this world. But what I've learned is that true success doesn't come from the validation of others. It comes from within. It comes from realizing that your worth isn't something that can be given or taken away by anyone. You are worthy because you choose to be. You are capable because you decide to be. And when you stop looking for someone else to tell you that you're enough, you'll finally see that you already are. It wasn't until I took control of my own life, my own destiny, that I realized how powerful I truly was. I had been waiting for someone else to give me permission to be who I was meant to be. But the truth is, I didn't need anyone else's permission. All I had to do was claim it for myself. Now, as I stand here, looking at the success I've built and the woman I've become, I can honestly say that I no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. My father's approval, Mia's recognition, none of that matters anymore. What matters is that I've created a life I'm proud of. A life where I am the one in control, where I am the one who decides what comes next. So, I encourage you to take that step. Don't wait for someone else to give you what you're already capable of taking for yourself. Life doesn't wait for you to catch up. It doesn't wait for you to be perfect, or for someone else to tell you it's your turn. What's the one thing you've been waiting for someone else to give you? And what would happen if you took it yourself? You have the power to shape your future. Don't let anyone, not even yourself, tell you that you can't. The moment you realize that your success is yours to define, that's when everything changes. What's one thing you've been waiting for someone else to give you? And how would your life change if you took it for yourself? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this and want to hear more captivating stories like this one, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot. And be sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.